Welcome, Swagatham, Vanakkam. If anyone were to ask me, what are the most poignant, heart-rending words Jesus ever uttered, without any hesitation and without having to think about it, I would immediately refer to the 18th verse of the 21st chapter of John's Gospel, which is the last chapter in that Gospel. So, chapter 21, verse 18 of John's Gospel is to me the saddest words Jesus ever uttered. Let me therefore read out those words to you, verse 18. And here Jesus is talking to or addressing Peter in particular. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you did not want to go. Where you did not want to go. I hope I don't have to make an effort to bring home to you the sadness, the subtle sadness that ripples through or is suffused through these words. Jesus is making a contrast between how one is when one is young, one is full of the zest for life, is overflowing with the energy of life, when everything is bright and cheerful, when one is full of initiatives and a sense of adventure, all the rest of it. And then comes the evening of one's life, old age, a complete change. If in your youth you put on whatever clothes you wanted, after the fashion of the times maybe, and went wherever you wanted, again after the trends of the time maybe, and there was no check, no hindrance. There was nobody to say, no, don't do it, don't wear this, you better wear this, don't go there, you better come here, nothing of the sort. But that will all change. When old age comes, someone else will make you wear what they think is appropriate. Someone else will grab you or hold you by the hand and lead you to where not you, but they want you to go. And very often this may include going where you do not want to go. Now, a complete change, a very painful transition in life is involved here. Now, why should we reflect or meditate on this statement, this insight by Jesus? Now, first of all, it's very moving to me that Jesus said these words when he was at the zenith of his physical power. Of course, the context is post-resurrection, but Jesus was at the prime of his youth when he was crucified. Now, Jesus therefore did not experience old age. Therefore, he must have been a very acute, close observer of everything that went about all around him. His parents may not have been particularly old. We actually do not know much about Joseph. He simply disappears from the scene. His mother may not have been even 50 years old, or maybe not even 55 years old. Let's put it that way. So she was not in a very dilapidated state. Clearly, Jesus has watched people in the neighborhood. His awareness spread far and wide. And he was very sympathetic to the various shades of experiences that comprise human life. Jesus was particularly at home with children, as we know. There was no limit to his admiration and affection for children. And that's the reason why he said, truly, truly, I say to you, unless you turn back and become like children, you shall in no wise enter the kingdom of God. Jesus was also particularly appreciative of the many advantages available to human beings when they are young, as is clearly evident from the passage I shared with you. So Jesus was very sensitive to all the various shades of life, and that's something I find very beautiful and very encouraging and very reassuring in him. Now let's enter a little more into the main space, shall we say, the inner chamber of the meanings of Jesus' statement here. Now, Jesus clearly implies that the most important thing in a human being's life is how he or she relates to others. Likewise, how others relate to him or her. Relationship is reciprocal. I relate to you, you relate to me. And when there is a harmony in our mutual affection, response, feelings towards each other, then that results in a happy relationship which is capable of growing deeper and deeper, more and more beautiful, more and more fulfilling, day by day, year after year. So, relationship occupies a very high place of importance in the spiritual vision of Jesus Christ. For example, when he talks about God the Father, he says, I and my Father are one. He's trying to communicate a certain understanding of God through a relationship or in the medium of a relationship. Jesus defines the relationship between him and his disciples. I do not call you servants, I call you my friends. So, Jesus is always very mindful of the significance, beauty, and importance of relationships. Therefore, I'm not surprised that he tries to make us understand what it means to be old or what it means to enter into old age through the prism of a relationship. And he clearly means to say that the way we relate to the world and the way the world relates to us when we are young changes very radically and dramatically as we enter old age. Now, when we think of relationship, we must think of that, especially in the context of trying to understand this in relation to the teachings of Jesus Christ or Jesus' vision of life. We must understand this in relation to Jesus' overall spiritual view of life, which is life in all its abundance. Jesus understood life not as somehow existing through the time allotted to us. He saw life as a celebration. He thought of life with great awe and wonder, with great excitement, with, shall I say, youthful zest and enthusiasm. Jesus himself draws a point of contrast between him and John the Baptist. He says John the Baptist came without eating and drinking. He was the embodiment of the ascetic ideal, which has always fascinated human beings. The ascetic ideal, as it is understood in the common parlance, or as it is usually understood, implies a certain attitude of negativity to the richness and the beauty and the celebration of life. The strength of the ascetic ideal lies in the denial of the many attractions of life, which are assumed to be invitations to a low level of life. So the very purpose of asceticism is to deny subjection to sensual delights in order to ascend higher and to lead a higher life. There's no point in saying no to the joys and pleasures of the senses if one is not to ascend to the higher life. So, asceticism that makes sense is the asceticism that says no to the pleasures of the world in order to attain the higher delights of the mind and the spirit. But Jesus sees life in its entirety as a great celebration, and therefore he was not in favor of the ascetic ideal as it is commonly understood. There is certainly an element of asceticism in Jesus, which is the asceticism which is a byproduct of one's acceptance of God's will, which therefore excludes certain types of experiences, interests, and inclinations from the life of individuals. On the other hand, his idea of being one with God certainly included a full-blooded, wholehearted, zestful, overflowing enthusiasm for life. That's something that I find very beautiful and inspiring in Jesus Christ. So Jesus believed in two things, and that's exactly what we need to be very clear about. Or the idea of life, the idea of a spiritually wholesome life that Jesus presents and recommends to us has two aspects. It's very easy, very simple to understand and very easy to remember. Only two aspects. One is a full enjoyment of the life given to us. The second is the opposite of it, which is the ascetic element, which is a wholesome ascetic element. And that is, your enjoyment of life should not exclude the enjoyment of life or the right to enjoy life that others have. Secondly, your enjoyment of life should not make you indifferent to the needs of others. For example, in the 16th chapter of Luke's Gospel is the story of Lazarus and the rich man. The problem with the rich man in that story is not that he enjoyed life. The problem is that his idea of life, his enjoyment, his idea of enjoying life excluded the needs of others. That distinction has to be very clearly understood. Similar was the problem with the young man who approached Jesus Christ with the question, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? You find that story in the 19th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. The problem there is not really that he was rich. The reason why Jesus asks him to go sell all he has and to give to the poor and then to follow him is that as Jesus understood the situation, this man, young man, though he was inclined also to have eternal life, so understood his present life, the life given to him here and now, in such a manner that there wasn't any room for others. And that's the reason why Jesus tries to reorient him from a state of complete self-absorption to a state of complete openness to others. And the real test of one's openness to life is not that one is open to the rich and the glamorous and the glitterati. It is that one is open to the poor, the marginalized, the disinherited. That's the reason why he says, go sell all you have and give to the poor. Meaning, learn to include people in the circle of your life. You cannot live all to yourself. Living entirely to oneself is the same as death. You become a living corpse. When you're in your grave, when you're in your sepulcher, when you're in your tomb, you're all by yourself. You don't care for others. You don't have to care for others. No one will hold you responsible for what is happening to anybody else. There too you have your neighbors. Your neighbors are those who are in the adjoining sepulchers. You're not responsible. You don't have to be responsible for them. But while you're alive, you cannot live all to yourself. You are in a state of responsibility towards all within reach of your sense of responsibility. So that is something that has to be very clearly understood. There's absolutely nothing against enjoying the life God has given to us. Because life is beautiful. And what is beautiful becomes meaningless if it's not enjoyed. Life is to be enjoyed, but there is a basic, simple, necessary condition for that enjoyment. That enjoyment is the way we enjoy our life, the extent to which we enjoy our life should not in the first place exclude others from the sharing of that richness of life, number one. Number two, it should not be at the expense of somebody else. We know that in this world people become rich, particularly people become rich overnight and mega rich overnight by exploiting others, by robbing others. That's what made a person like Proudhon, or the French philosopher of history and economics, Proudhon, Prudhon, to say that private property is theft. Private property is theft. And Tolstoy also says something somewhat similar, not exactly the same words. For example, he said that if you eat your bread in idleness, it is theft. If you have not earned your bread through your hard work, if you have not worked for it, then you are actually stealing that bread from somebody else. You are not entitled to that bread because you have not gained it through your work. You have not earned it through your work. Therefore, you're stealing it from somebody else. So there has to be a sense of responsibility. There is a sense of concern, commitment to others. Now, when you are young, you are in the state of abundance. You are in the state, for example, of the rich man, the man whose land brought forth plenty. You find that story, I think, in the 12th chapter of Luke's Gospel. I mean, man's land brought forth plenty. What did he do? He gathered up everything unto himself. So when you are young, you are in that state of plenty. Everything is plentiful. Plenty of energy, plenty of freedom, plenty of opportunities, no limit to what you can do, no limit to where you can go, so on and so forth. You are in a state of plenty. Even if you are poor, you are still in a state of plenty as compared to old age. I would rather be a poor young man than a rich old man who is totally confined to his bed. So that is something that we have to clearly understand. Spirituality is not anti-life. Spirituality is not against the enjoyment of life. But spirituality is certainly against that idea or that mode of enjoying one's life which excludes everybody else and which also makes you want to thrive at the expense of others. These are the limits. And that's why Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. You have to love yourself. If you love yourself, you'll celebrate your life. There's no doubt about it. The only authentic mode of loving is celebration. When a young man loves a young woman, when a young woman reciprocates the love of a young man, they are celebrating their love. There is not a moment of dullness. It is not states between sleep and wakefulness. They're all the time celebrating the mutually discovered delight of being together. It's a celebration, it's a festival, it's a carnival if you like. So there is nothing wrong about it. But if your celebration of life makes you self-centered, selfish, utterly indifferent to the world around you, indifferent to the needs of your fellow human beings, and indifferent also to your duties by the Almighty, who gave you life and everything that is good in it, then there is a problem, and your wealth can become your poverty, your success can become your defeat, and your security can become the highway to your eternal damnation. And that's precisely what Jesus means. So, now Jesus is saying, look, when you are young, you are in a state of plenty, and the way you relate to people is of a particular kind. But all that will change when you are old. Now, why does he say so, and what is its contemporary application? On that I'll close. Now, these words strike me particularly as very, very poignant, deep in pathos and meaning, because I'm in that state myself. I'm an old man by usual standards. So what does this statement mean to me? That's precisely what I want to bear witness to. What this communicates to me precisely is this. As I enter my old age. I already entered my old age. Now that I'm an old man, physically, if not mentally and spiritually, I have to be all the more mindful of my relationship with others. First of all, I have to be realistic about my predicament. Jesus clearly means us to understand that we should not expect from the life all around us, that is to say, the people all around us, precisely what we could have expected when we were young. Do not bring your youthful or young age expectations into your old age. Please understand that people are not going to relate to you exactly the same way that they related to you when you were young and you were flamboyant, you were energetic, you radiated life, you were good looking and all the rest of it. There was an aura about you. All that's gone. Don't carry into old age the very same expectations that were legitimate, that were all right when you were young. You have to understand that the range of your possibilities, the range of your enjoyment is now much narrower. So others will decide many things about you, maybe even including what you should wear and what you should not wear, where you should be and where you should not be. Young people, for example, have very definite notions about what is right and appropriate for their parents, especially if their parents are past 60. They should have no enjoyment of life. They should have no romantic experience. They should not be unduly interested in things worldly. They should have their eyes raised to some higher levels of contemplation, etc. What is more intensely human, exuberantly human, should be out of bounds for them. All these notions are there. Rather than fight those notions, understand those ideas and assumptions in their proper spirit. Realize that the times have changed. You had your days. Now the time has come to redefine your relationship with the human context around you. Accept many things. And the freedom of choice that you exercised in great abundance when you were young will certainly be reduced. So other people decide. Well, but Jesus here says other people will take you to where you do not want to go. It's a general symbolic statement that other people decide what you should be doing and you should not be doing. Suppose you are confined to your room and much worse, confined to the bed. You cannot choose many things for yourself. Even before you become old, if you are unwell and admitted to the hospital, it's not you but the doctor who treats you decides what you should be eating and what you should not be eating, what medicine you should be having or should not be having, when you should be admitted to the hospital, when you should be discharged from the hospital, and even after you're discharged from the hospital, what regime of treatment you should continue, so on and so forth. Many things are not decided by you. They're decided by the hospital, the doctor who is in charge of your treatment. So that is not an unusual situation, but that becomes the way of life for you when you are old, and you should be graceful enough to accept it. But the point is, even then, even after accepting in a mature and realistic fashion that the kind of expectations and entitlements that were legitimate when one was young are no longer so when one is old, even after accepting all that, it doesn't mean that one has to feel defeated and alienated from life. One does not have to feel that one is left behind by life. One can still celebrate life. And that's precisely the challenge of old age. But to be able to do so, one has to live one's youth in a certain manner. And therefore, the paradox is that even when you are young, you have to be mindful of your old age. And so live the whole of your life that when you become old, there is still something left in you by which you will continue to be relevant, continue to be positive, continue to be a source of blessing and inspiration to those all around you. And this is eminently possible. But if one has lived a meaningless life, if one has merely wasted one's life chasing the vain shadows of the world, and therefore there is nothing left in one's kitty as one enters old age, then it's a very pathetic situation. On the other hand, if one has lived wisely, if one has bothered to enter into the deeper experiences and reflections of life, if one has developed one's personality aright, if one has, as Jesus says, expressed the light hidden within, and so served as a source of blessing and inspiration in the life of many, then such a person, when he enters old age, will not be in this plight. He will continue, or she will continue, to enjoy the love, respect, and affection of others. He will still continue to feel that his life or her life is relevant to the life all around, and that till one breathes the last, one can still be a source of comfort, of encouragement, of enrichment to the immediate circle of people, family members. So as I said at the outset, if anyone were to ask me what are the saddest words that Jesus ever uttered, I would say the 18th verse of the 21st chapter of John's Gospel. When you're old, others will tie the girdle around you and then lead you by the hand to the places where you did not want to go. There are the places that you did not want to go. But before I close, let me also say this. We have to critically evaluate the places that we do not want to go. Are they decided in terms of our narrow understanding of what is good and what is not, what is desirable and what is not? Why is it that we don't want to go there? For example, one of the places we may not want to go is the idea of being humble, especially for a person who has lived a life of authority all his life. When the same person becomes old, then he or she will not any longer be able to exercise the authority that he or she exercised to the full measure. In his or her old age, it becomes difficult to exercise authority even to 10% of the same measure. Then one has to accept that condition. If one had certain habits, one finds it very difficult to give up. Others may decide whether you should give it up or not. When you were young, you could have given full expression to your temper tantrums. It may not be all right, it may not be acceptable if you become garrulous, unhappy, complaining all the time, and live as an embodiment of gloom, negativity, darkness. Then others will decide that they do not want to be burdened with it any longer. And you may be then comfortably accommodated in an old age home. Others will take you to where you don't want to go. But that depends to a large extent on the person concerned. So one has to be careful in one's old age. That I fully agree. And I'm totally convinced about it. One has to be very careful. One has to understand realistically one's predicament in old age. One should not bring into old age the sort of entitlements and expectations that were legitimate in one's youth. One should rather have mellowed a sense of realism, a sanctified sense of common sense, to understand what is legitimate and what is not. At the same time, without relapsing into negativity, cynicism, and a sense of being defeated in life, which is altogether unnecessary. You are still a child of God, no matter how old you are. And you still have that most precious gift of all, the gift of life in you, till you breathe your last. And therefore, your value can never be diminished. What will change are the circumstances that impinge on this precious gift of life. And one should have the godly sense of realism to understand and accept that which cannot be changed, as that old beautiful prayer tells us. Let me close on that prayer. Lord, give me the courage to change what I can, and the patience to accept what I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. That is a prayer that I suppose is quite appropriate to old age. The courage and determination to change what one can, including changing oneself, which is the most difficult task in the world. To accept what I cannot change, and then the wisdom to know the difference. It is this wisdom that we need to cultivate in our old age. And I send these words particularly to all my friends who are who have entered this blessed state of old age, that God may richly imbue them with the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you. All the best.